Last offseason, Alex Anthopoulos hit the lottery by acquiring Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez. As we look into this offseason, who could be that player that he targets again to hopefully strike gold? I'll answer that question and many more on today's mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves, where you can submit questions, and comments to be answered on the podcast, just like you'll see on today's mailbag episode. If you're watching this on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, the thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. All those things truly help out a ton when you do them. And if you listen on the audio version, you can help out by leaving a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for all the support that you give me here at Locked On Braves, hanging out with me during the offseason. Even as quiet as it has been, you remained loyal to the podcast, leaving comments, watching. I really do appreciate it a ton. This is our mailbag episode, though. I got a ton of questions that we'll answer today. And the biggest one is, can Alex Anthopoulos do it again? Can he find another Chris Sale, another Reynaldo Lopez this offseason? Somebody that many people have given up on or don't think much of, and they can turn it around. We'll look at some of those options today, and I'll answer a bunch of other questions regarding the Atlanta Braves. You can start the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And thank you all for joining me here live on this Friday afternoon to get the weekend kicked off. I know we have the non-tender deadline coming up soon. If anything major happens, then I'll probably do a short either way. But if anything surprising happens, maybe we'll jump back on for an abbreviated podcast later, but I don't expect to see too much surprise. We talked a lot about that on Thursday night's episode if you want to give that a listen. So going to answer the questions that got submitted. There is a little bit of news with the Braves hiring a couple of hitting coaches and signing a minor league outfielder. I'll talk about those later in the show. First question here I want to answer, though, comes from a Big Dog fan who says, AA never makes the obvious move. Who's that Chris Sale kind of move that's out there? And I'm referring to find a player on the come up, not necessarily a Cy Young or MVP winner. What is your opinion? The way I kind of interpret this question, and maybe I'm making it into my own question, so I apologize for that, Big Dog, if this is what I'm doing. I'm looking for somebody that maybe the industry has given up on. Maybe the industry doesn't view as highly as they once did, but perhaps they have some potential. Those are the kind of guys that I'm looking for here. And I think there's two obvious ones that come to mind that we've talked about a lot, and that's Jordan Montgomery and Walker Buehler. Buehler, obviously, once a very good pitcher. After the second Tommy John, was not great last year. Had a couple of good starts in the postseason to end things. And Jordan Montgomery, very popular pitcher going into last offseason, signed late, had a disastrous season. Those are the two that we have discussed a ton. And I think either one of those guys make a lot of sense to fit this mold of a pitcher who, maybe once was good, has some potential, but a lot of people are down on them right now. So those are the top two that come to mind for me. Another one, and this one has been mentioned by some listeners to me already this offseason. I apologize, don't remember your names to give you credit, but Reed Detmers is a very interesting one. Pitcher for the Angels. And Reed Detmer is just a hard one to figure out. Reed Detmers is a hard one to figure out because he's got big swing and miss stuff. You're talking about a guy who had a 27.9% strikeout rate last year, 26.1 the year before that. He's also a guy that's been demoted off the Angels, who need all the help that they can get. But he has, good stuff, good swing and miss stuff. He can't, for whatever reason, put it together and stay up consistently. And you look at a guy, with a curveball or a slider rather, that had a 36.8% whiff rate last year. The curveball is what I remember from his college days. That was really good. I want to say back at Louisville where he was pitching, but it's a left-handed pitcher A lot of potential, first round pick, 10th overall pick, and he's just never hit that ceiling. I think this is somebody that the Braves could target. Maybe they see something that they can fix, and he puts it all together. And he's had stretches at the big league level where he's looked like that guy. He's looked like the guy that he could be. And he is just 25 years old, turns 26 in July. It's a couple of minor league options. He's not a free agent until 2029. So, I mean, he's cheap. He's controllable. There's reasons why the Angels might not want to give up on him. But if they do, that to me is a guy that the Braves could go get. He'd be affordable. Again, a lot of control. And if you can just tweak something, I don't know what that something is, but the Braves have done a great job of developing pitchers and helping them improve. And if they see something with a Reed Detmers, I would not mind taking a shot on that. Because again, he's shown flashes. The stuff is there, and the potential, for whatever reason, he's not been able to unlock it on a consistent basis. So that's one guy for me that I would look at to say, and again, I get what you're saying, Owen Ray. Maybe it doesn't make sense for the Angels to trade him right now because his value is low. But I'm just saying, if they were, and they were ready to give up on him, because that's kind of what we're looking for, or at least what I'm looking for in this question is maybe guys that have been in a team too long. It hasn't really taken off for them. And the guy just needs a fresh start, and the team's ready to move on. And I think that could be the case for Reed Detmers. So he's another one that I thought on. I'll go quickly through the rest of these. Tristan McKenzie, who just signed for $1.9 million with the Guardians. Now, the Guardians do a great job of developing pitching, and if they can't get Tristan McKenzie back on track, which part of that is injuries, then I don't know that the Braves can do that much better. This one may surprise you a little bit, and that is Yu Darvish. Only reason I say this one to me is a little bit more similar to the Chris Sale situation last year, where you got an aging pitcher who hasn't been able to stay healthy, and perhaps the Padres are just trying to free up some money. And maybe the Braves want to take their shot on him. Now, he's owed a good bit more money than Chris Sale was over more years. But again, just kind of throwing that one out there as a Chris Sale kind of comp in terms of situation, as a guy that still owed a good bit of money. He's aging, can't stay healthy. Maybe the Braves bank on, he's actually going to be healthy, but he's been really good when he's pitched. And then I think the Rays have several arms that, again, there's no reason for the Rays to want to give up on these guys necessarily. But if they were, Shane McClanahan can't stay healthy. Ryan Pepiot, who they just got, again, I don't think they would give up on him. Taj Bradley, Shane Baz, there's 4 guys right there for the Rays that have a lot of potential when healthy. Some of them have been able to reach that potential. But again, if the Rays were wanting to get some offense, maybe, not that the Braves have a lot to give, maybe those guys could be available. And the last one for me is Chris Paddock, who, again, is a free agent. So this one wouldn't necessitate a trade, but I think he's somebody that still has potential, was really good back in the day for the Padres. Twins, who have done a great job with pitchers as well, kind of unlocked a little bit for him. And he's a guy, too, that, I talked about this with Frankie Montas. I think Grant Holmes kind of fits into this role. They could go back and forth, but maybe it's the guy. Maybe this one is more similar to Reynaldo Lopez, where you've seen sparks with him as a reliever, and you've also seen him have a little bit of success with his starter. Can the Braves turn him full-time back into a starter and unlock something there? So Chris Paddock is another one for me. Mass Boost, I think you're talking about Yusei Kikuchi, who's, I believe, is a free agent. Astros kind of unlocked something with him. I would agree with that one to some extent, that he kind of fits this mold too, as somebody that, if the Braves unlock something, again, maybe the Astros are the one who unlocked it, having him throw that slider a bunch. He could also kind of fit in this mold. But those are some of the guys that I was thinking about. Again, let me know if you think there's some others out there, but it would not be surprising if AA takes a shot on one of these guys or somebody else we didn't talk about, and the Braves see something that they can fix and get him going. But to hit on Chris Sale or Reynaldo Lopez like they did last offseason, I mean, those don't come very often. I mean, you ended up signing a guy who won the Cy Young and a guy that had an ERA under 2, and guys that not many people thought of. I mean, most of us, including myself, thought Lopez would ultimately be destined for the bullpen. I was high on Chris Sale. I did not think he would be Cy Young or win a Cy Young, but I thought he'd be really, really good. So again, I don't know if the Braves can get that lucky again, but it would not be surprised me if they take another shot like that on some of these guys, or like I said, maybe somebody else that I didn't even mention. All right, a lot more questions to get into. I think we got 13 more questions to get into on today's episode, always covering a variety of topics about the Atlanta Braves. We'll get into the rest of these questions here next. Shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event, and you don't when you use Gametime. I'm telling you about the Gametime app for a while now. It's the only app that I use whenever I'm getting ready to go to a Braves game. I'll start checking out the app early in the week, seeing where some of the best deals are, and sometimes they get even better right up until game time. You get the Gametime guarantee, which means if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. A couple other features I love about the Gametime app: you get a view from your seat right there on the one screen where you're looking at the ticket, and you can also filter it so you get that all-in price, so you know what you're paying when you get to check out. No surprises there. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen, solely catching up with everything happening around Major League Baseball, all the non-tenders that'll be happening on Friday. So check that out over there on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. This will be the last podcast for the week unless something major happens. It's the offseason, and so we'll always be on standby if there's a big move that goes down. Otherwise, we'll be back on Monday looking at a couple more prospects and talking about, again, any news that happens over the weekend. Let's jump into the questions now. Eddie Zipper says, pretend it's next summer and name every guy wearing a Braves hat at the All-Star game. And I am glad that they're going to start wearing team uniforms again. I've said multiple times, I'm not a uniform person, but some of the designs they've come up with at these All-Star games are just atrocious. So coming back to Atlanta, going to be able to wear their own team. I think that is a smart choice. Glad to see that. Because it's in Atlanta, they might get a boost on one or two. But if you're just asking me, who do I think is going to be all-star worthy come next summer? Austin Riley is the first one that comes to mind for me. I think, going to have a healthy first half. I'm expecting a really big season from Austin Riley, which, when he's healthy, that's exactly what we get. And he usually is, as long as he doesn't get hit in the hand anymore. So I say Austin Riley is one. I'm going to say Acuna is another one. And this may not be dependent on what he does, more so just fans voting for him. He's a popular player, not just in Atlanta. And if he's back, within the first month or two and puts up decent numbers, I think he's going to get a good amount of votes. So I'm going to say Riley and Acuna. I want to say Olsen, but first base can obviously be very deep. So I'm going to say Riley and Acuna for sure. I'm going to say Chris Sale is another one. I'm going to say he's going to have a good first half of the season. Those are the three that I think I can comfortably predict will be in the All-Star game. Like I said, I think Olsen could be there. Would not surprise me if Ozzie is in there either. And then maybe another pitcher if Strider, comes back pretty quickly. It looks like Strider. I think they could have as many as 6. I think those 6 guys could potentially make it. Look, I'm high on Sean Murphy, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think he's going to be an all-star. But I think the Braves at least get 3 in Riley, Sale, and Acuna. And I think at most they get 6, adding Ozzie, Strider, and Olsen was the other one that I mentioned. Next question comes from Emmanuel. Just for fun, what possibilities do you see the Braves trading for Luis Angel, Acuna, and what do you think that trade would look like? What would it take? I get this one a lot, and understandably, because it would be pretty cool to see Luis Angel come over. I don't think it would take a lot. I also just don't know that he's the answer. Like if he's your answer at shortstop, I don't know. I know he had a great, first taste of the major leagues, but his numbers weren't good at the minor leagues, and he really kind of cooled off after a hot first week with the Mets. What would it take? I say it doesn't take a lot. I still think you'd probably have to give up one of A.J. Smith-Shawver or Hurston Waldrop to get him. When I looked at the Mets prospect, I think Luis Angel was ranked 12th in their system. But again, the Braves farm system just isn't that deep. I don't see a trade happening between the Braves and the Mets anyway, but I think that's still what the cost would be as one of your better pitching prospects. Maybe you can go down a tier and give up an Owen Murphy or a J.R. Ritchie or somebody like that. Not saying I would do that, but just what I think it would cost, something like that. Dustin Mounts, what do you think we learn about offseason plans based on who is non-tendered and tendered? That's a good question. And we kind of, again, touched on this Thursday. If Ramon Laureano and Griffin Canning are both non-tendered, that would hopefully tell me that the Braves are getting ready to make a big move, whether for a starting pitcher or for a hitter. I don't really care which one. Otherwise, you're gonna have to replace those guys. Like, you're going to need a back of the rotation, depth starter like a Griffin Canning. You're going to need a fourth or fifth outfielder like a Ramon Laureano. So if you don't bring those guys back, my hope would be that means you're gearing up, preparing yourself to go out and make at least one big move somewhere. So that's what I'm hoping to learn from the non-tender deadline. If they pick up those guys, again, I don't necessarily think it means they can't go do a big splash move. I feel like it's less likely they go do a big splash move. And if you listen to my opening day roster prediction episode that I recorded on Thursday, then I probably don't think, or that I don't think a big move is coming this offseason. So again, that's kind of what I would take, and it's all just an assumption on what happens at the non-tender deadline. Emmanuel says, what do you know about Jose Gabriel Perdomo's progress this year? How far do you believe he is from being an option for the Braves? So I was really excited to see Perdomo. Not that I don't know that we would have actually got to see him unless you went out to Arizona, but there was talks that they were going to start him in the AFL, not the AFL, the Arizona Complex League this season. Usually those international signings, they'll start out, in the DSL or something like that, and then they'll come over to the Arizona Complex League. But they were going to start him out in Arizona, but he got injured before the year started. He never made the trip to Arizona, and he only played 8 games in the DSL. So we don't have a lot to go on. I would assume that this year they do start him out in the Arizona Complex League and let him play there. If he were to just go off, maybe he gets a little bit of run in Augusta, but that's not likely. I would not predict that's going to happen. So I think he probably plays this year in the Arizona Complex League. Next year we see him, 2026, we see him in Augusta. And I would still project that it's 2028 before we were to see Perdomo, unless he just absolutely takes off. And I don't know that about him yet. Obviously, I haven't seen him yet. But if he were to just take off, maybe you could say I'd say 2027 at the earliest, but 2028, I think, is where we really would start seeing about Jose Perdomo perhaps making an impact. The Chosen One says, is there an international signing that become the next Ozzy Albies or Acuna in our farm system currently? I think it's the guy we just talked about. I think Perdomo is that guy that perhaps could be that next international prospect for the Braves. They need him to be honest. And I know they're about to sign a big prospect out of Cuba as well. At least they're projected to in the upcoming international class. But they need one or two of these international prospects who really take off. Luis Guanipa is another one that I'm excited about. It was not a great season for him stateside this year. He hit just 219 overall, hit 184 in Augusta in 32 games. But he's got a lot of tools. I'm really excited about him. But Perdomo, Guanipa, those are the two, toast of the international class right now that we're really hoping are going to turn into something, because the draft has, been focused on pitching so heavily. And I think that's good to do, because that's the Braves' strength, is developing pitching. So I'm okay with doing that, but that means you have to hit in the international market, which is primarily for position players, although they've done good on the pitching side of that too. Kathy G says, realizing this could be an entire pod, did anyone's offseason predictions, rumors turn out to be true for the Braves in the last few offseasons? You're right. That would take a lot of research for me to go through, but I can safely assume that the answer is no, because it feels like whatever Alex Anthopoulos does, it's not what any of us were thinking. Nobody was thinking about a trade for Chris Sale. And maybe I had it mentioned to me once or twice last offseason. I don't know that anybody was really thinking about Reynaldo Lopez. So again, I'd have to go back and do some further research, but I can say pretty confidently that nobody has really done a great job of predicting what Alex Anthopoulos would do. And rumors are I don't buy into them. Like I talked about with the John Morosi stuff, saying the Braves are interested in Willy Adames. They're interested in Walker Buehler. Of course they are. They're checking on everybody, especially at positions of need. The Braves just don't leak anything either. So you really have no idea what they're going to do. And I just don't buy into these reports, rumors that the Braves are linked or interested in anybody. Now, when Mark Bowman says that the Braves are interested, linked to Nathan Eovaldi, if a Braves beat writer like that says something, I may give it a little bit more validity. But even that, I'm sure the Braves are checking on Nathan Eovaldi. It's not that wild to me to believe. JDK, for the rotation, would you rather trade the farm for Crochet, whose contract allows for other big upgrades, or sign Eovaldi or similar at $20 million per and make moderate upgrades? This is a no-brainer for me. And if you've been listening to the podcast this offseason, you probably know I'm trading for Crochet. I think he's going to be that guy. I think he might be the next Chris Sale. I think that highly of Garrett Crochet. I've gone back and watched a couple of his starts from last year, and it's just really amazing watching him work and how he's able to pinpoint 97, 98, and then throw a 93 mile per hour cutter off that. I think there's more room to grow for Garrett Crochet. I get the injury concerns. There's injury concerns with all pitchers. Giving Nathan Eovaldi $20 million per year for a guy that is probably going to be a 3.74 ERA type of pitcher. Again, I'd take the big swing and get Crochet. That's just the way that I would do it, but certainly understand if some of you disagree, and let me know that. Let's have a good conversation about that. Brandon Bushnell says, what player that is projected to be on the 2025 Braves roster would you want to see traded away, either for another player upgrade or just to make room for somebody else? This is an interesting question. I think the easy cop-out for me is to say Joe Jimenez. He's technically on the roster, and you're not going to get much of anything out of him in 2025. So if the Braves could trade that and free up that money, that's the one player that I would want to see traded. But I don't know that there's anybody else on this roster that I really want to see traded. I mean, I'm not one that wants to trade Murphy, certainly not Olsen, Ozzie, Riley, Acuna, or Michael Harris. And I don't even want to trade Orlando Arcia, because even if you don't go get another shortstop, Arcia at $2 million as your bench player is still very valuable. So I don't even want to trade him. I wouldn't trade any of the pitchers that we currently have. Now, if you're going off 40-man roster, I mean, I'd be okay trading a Bryce Elder or an Ian Anderson to free up room if you're going to make a significant upgrade there. Otherwise, I don't hate those guys as depth. But I can't really think of anybody else on this roster that I'd want to trade. I like this roster. I like the players that are on here. The JDK, Jake, in your opening day lineup prediction, you didn't have the Braves upgrading shortstop or left field. Do you think that'd be an offseason failure even with the returning Ronnie and the other core position players in place? Jay Smith had a similar question. I know this team is still good on paper and health will help, but do you see this offseason as failed if we still have the same shortstop and left field platoon situation, even if we bring in a solid starter in pin piece? And Jay Smith clarified if we did one or the other. It doesn't have to be both. But would it be a failed offseason if we don't upgrade one of those positions? Again, this is probably going to be controversial. A lot of you aren't going to agree with me. I don't think it would be a failed offseason if you use those resources to upgrade the pitching side of things, whether to get a solid middle rotation starter and a solid setup guy for the bullpen. Those to me are the two biggest priorities of the offseason. I can live with Orlando Arcia at shortstop and a platoon of Kelenic and Laureano, or Kelenic and Randall Grichuk if they were to go out and get a free agent. I could live with that in left field. That's assuming everybody else stays healthy. That assumes Acuna is back quickly and is like himself, and Strider the same on the pitching side. I can live with Orlando Arcia and a platoon of Kelenic and Laureano at the bottom of my lineup. What I can't live with is pitcher gets injured, pitcher regresses, your rotation is blown up. Same thing happens in the bullpen. Again, I know I said it before last year, it would take several injuries for me to believe this offense wouldn't be good enough. And it did. It took a lot of injuries. It's hard for me to see that happening again. So I don't think it would be a failure. I don't think it would be a failure of an offseason if neither one of those positions is upgraded. But again, I know a lot of you disagree with that. And again, we can continue that conversation in the comment section below. right, I got several more questions to get to on this podcast. I also want to get into that news. We may go a little bit longer than normal, but we'll try to wrap things up here next. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. While you're there, you can check out the World Series odds for 2025, and you're going to see the Braves out there with the third best odds going into the offseason before a single move is even made. And they have the second best odds to win the National League behind the Dodgers. See all that at FanDuel.com. And again, you can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way that you play. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, I quickly try to go through some of these other questions here. Owen Ray, do you think there is a chance of Houston trading Tucker? There were some rumors of trade before and during last year, and many of their players are getting towards the end of their contract, so maybe they look to hit the reset button. Again, I don't know the Astros' plans. I doubt they're going to blow it up. I think a lot will be said on what happens with Alex Bregman. Or not just Alex Bregman, but how do they replace Alex Bregman? I've heard some rumors that maybe they might sign Willy Adames to replace Alex Bregman. If they do that, that tells me the Astros are in. And if you're in, you can't sell Kyle Tucker. So for this offseason, I say the chances are slim. You get into the season and maybe things start to fall apart for the Astros and their aging players. Finally, the Astros finally start to age. Then maybe Tucker does become available. But I'd say this offseason, the chances are not very likely. Hayden Harris, Alex always talks about how he can't let other teams dictate his own. His other team actions dictate his own. However, if the Phillies make a big move or two, should it make the Braves more aggressive? No, because this is baseball. And the Dodgers can go out and get Roki Sasaki and get Yamamoto and get whoever they want. And look, if things go wrong for them and somebody gets hurt, the playing field is level. And even if that's the case, and I know they just won a World Series, so maybe this wasn't the best example to bring up now. They won a World Series after paying $700 million for Ohtani, or how much actually they're ever paying him. But you can have the most expensive roster in baseball. Maybe look at the Mets a couple of years ago, and you can still lose. So, again, the Braves are a good team. If things go their way and everybody's healthy come postseason time, they're going to have a good chance at winning a World Series despite whatever anybody else does. So, no, he's never operated like that, and I don't think he'll start now. Mike Brooks, if the Braves non-tender Ramon tonight, could that spell a bigger deal for left field, or is $6 million too expensive for this team? We've kind of talked about that a couple of times now. I would hope that if they non-tender Laureano, that means they have their sights on getting something bigger for either the outfield or the rotation. Caden Hurd, if you were would you rather sign Teoscar Hernandez and some pitching, or go all in with our current rotation and get Willie and some cheap bullpen arm? I'm not in on Willy Adames, at least not at the price point. And look, if it's not my money, then sure, go get him. It's one of your biggest needs on the position player side of things. But I think I would rather sign in this scenario. I would rather get Teoscar Hernandez and some pitching. Like, give me Teoscar Hernandez and go get a Walker Buehler or Jordan Montgomery. Even bring back Charlie Morton. I would be okay with that, rather than getting Willy Adames. That takes up your entire budget, and then you get some cheap pitching help. Again, my biggest needs are the pitching side of things. So whatever helps me get more depth on the pitching side is what I will be for. TST Studios, who's the next prospect to be rushed through the system like AJ Smith-Shawver or Spencer Schwellenbach, who came through quickly? So I think Lucas Braun and Drew Hackenberg have to be at the top of this list. I mean, they were just drafted in 2023, and I think they're legitimately knocking on the door. Now, those guys could be more ready because they have college experience. So it's not necessarily rushing those guys. Outside of them, if they were to push up a J.R. Ritchie, that to me would be rushing. A young pitcher coming off Tommy John surgery, just let's say he would, even if he started at high A this year, and let's say he dominated high A for the first month or two, they call him up to double A, he dominates there, and the Braves need pitching help in the middle of the season, and they call up J.R. Ritchie. That to me would be rushing. That would, to me, would be rushing a young kid who's not far removed from Tommy John, probably needs some more innings, probably needs some more development. And again, a lot of this depends on the mental aspect of the game for a pitcher. You look at a Spencer Swellenbach, who not many people outside of, I know some of us here, were very high on, and he comes up and he just dominates because he has that mentality. That's sometimes the biggest unknown and the biggest hurdle for a pitcher. Kyle Wright is one of the examples I bring up a lot. It's somebody that had really good stuff. He just could not get over that mental hurdle until he finally did. I'm excited to see what Kyle Wright can do this year, by the way, with the Royals. Hopefully he's back healthy and ready to go. Last one from Wriggler 2. The Braves get 6 games in minor league parks in 2025. What's your take on the situation with the Rays and the A's? It is a mess. I mean, the A's situation is a giant debacle over there. The Rays obviously can't help what happened with the hurricane, but now they're about to spend $23 million to fix a stadium that nobody likes when they need to be building them a new stadium anyway. It's a mess of a situation, but both of those minor league ballparks seem to be pretty good for offense. So, if you're in a fantasy league, maybe pile up on some Rays and A's hitters this year, because I think they're going to have a lot of offense in those stadiums. All right, quickly get to some of the news of the day, as we do have some news to get to. The Braves signed outfielder Carlos D. Rodriguez. The reason they have to say Carlos D. Rodriguez is because the Brewers had another prospect, Carlos Rodriguez, who was a pitcher. I know this because Carlos D. Rodriguez is in my very deep dynasty league, and I was thinking about dropping him, but hey, now the Braves got him, so maybe I'll keep him. 1 year non-guaranteed deal for Rodriguez, /298, 376, 396 with 4 homers, 42 walks at 41 strikeouts, and 15 stolen bases at AA last year. Got up to AAA. He played 31 games there, /245, 344, so still a good on base, but just a 309 slug with no homers, but 17 walks to 11 strikeouts, 2 stolen bases, also got caught stealing twice at AAA. So a guy who puts the ball in play, doesn't strike out, has some speed, can play in the outfield. This is outfield depth, behind a guy like an Eli White or somebody like Forrest Ball type, something like that, but a guy who obviously has some good bat-to-ball skills. Braves also hired 2 more hitting coaches, Hugh Quattlebaum, hopefully I'm saying that right, who is an assistant with the Diamondbacks, and Carlos Mendez, who was promoted in the minor league system. So the Braves have their hitting coach staff now behind Tim Hires there. So excited to see what they can do. All right, that is it for this episode of Locked On Braves. A lot to get to on this mailbag episode. Again, we'll be having some more information come out here later today on the non-tenders. I will do a short upload on that. Again, if anything crazy happens there, we'll jump back on the podcast, but I'm not expecting anything wild, but I will do a short later on that, just recapping what happens at the non-tender deadline. Thank you all for joining me here today. Jack Norton, Mass Boost, Lav S, Owen Ray, BC, David Agnesia, Uncle Jimbo, AJ Evans, BC. Thank you all for being here with me live on today's mailbag episode. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves, and we will talk to you next.